What is psychology? In one sentence, psychology is the scientific study of human behavior and experience. And as psychologists, what we want to do is understand those various ranges of human behavior that we see being displayed every day in human behavior. And those kind of behaviors you can see in the images in front of you. The kind of behaviors that people display when they want to intentionally harm someone else. So show some kind of aggression towards another person. And then also, why is it that as humans, we can blindly conform to the actions of an authority figure, as you can see in some of the images in front of you? In your first unit, which is an external exam at the end of year 12, you will explore 5 different areas within psychology that are attempting to explain human behavior. And those approaches vary from biological approaches that want to look at all the internal influences within a human that makes them behave the way they do. So exploring things like genetics, neurotransmitters, structure of the brain, and how all these can make a person behave a certain way. So going from biology to then psychology and looking at all the psychological approaches that explain human behavior. So for example, we have our psychodynamic approach that tends to originate behavior in childhood and in the unconscious mind. And then in comparison, we have our behaviorists who want to say that we're the complete opposite. We're people who are born a blank slate and everything we are is the product of our environment. Then on to cognitive psychologists and our more, in Western society, more newly founded approach, and that is positive psychology, that unlike the other 4 approaches, doesn't look at why people went wrong, but instead looks at what we should embrace in the positivity of human behavior. It will take us a while through year 12 to look at all these different explanations that come from all those different psychologists that come under the heading of this word called psychology. But it's really important that we look at the role of a psychologist, and they do see their role as being someone who will explain why people go wrong or why people need to look at the more positive aspects of human behavior. Because explaining human behavior then helps us treat it, and psychologists see their duty as being those who not only can explain human behavior, but can then also inform treatments so that we can make people better. And this is where we will explore, still under the same heading of the 5 different approaches in psychology, that we will explore how those 5 different approaches will then treat human behavior. So if I'm a biological psychologist who thinks that all behavior can be explained from someone's physiology, then I will only want to treat the physiology. So in particular, I will look to treat it through drug therapy, because I can create a drug that will target that aspect of their physiology, and I will alter that physiology, and as a result, I will make them better. And then the same applies to all the other psychological approaches that we will look at. So if I am a behavioral psychologist who thinks that all human behaviors are born a blank slate and everything they are is what they learn, then in the same way that we've learned good behaviour, we can learn bad behaviour. So I can unlearn it in exactly the same way. And so we will start looking at therapies, in particular a therapy that looks at how phobias are a learned behaviour. And so in the same way that we learn to be afraid of a phobia, we can unlearn it. And by unlearning it in exactly the same way, we can treat someone of a phobia that's become debilitating to their daily lives. In that sense, we move on to our second unit. And our second unit is made up of us wanting to bring psychology up to the present day under the heading of what we call, first of all, temporary debates. We're still focusing on the 5 main approaches in psychology. But this time we're taking everything that we learnt about their assumptions, about the therapies, about how good or how bad they are as an approach to explaining human behaviour. We've taken all that information and we're now applying it to a modern day behaviour that we see going on in our societies. And we look at that behaviour and we debate it. So, for example, when we come to cognitive psychology, we look at what cognitive psychologists have told us are the explanations for behaviour, and then the therapies that they've brought in, and then we apply it to an everyday life debate. And that debate is the reliability of eyewitness testimony. And in this particular scenario, we look at what psychologists have told us about one of our main cognitive processes, and that's our memory. And we look at how our memory can sometimes be our downfall. And eyewitness testimony is an example of that, because as eyewitnesses, we rely on our memories. And a lot of research by cognitive psychologists tells us that our memories are not actually as reliable as we would like them to be. So even when we're in a situation where we are an eyewitness and we genuinely believe that what we are saying we have actually seen, research tells us that our memory traces are actually quite fragile and they can be subject to change. So it's at this point where we will look at how good really are our memories at this point. And so we will look at the reliability of us as eyewitnesses, because a lot lies on it, because people are convicted not solely on an eyewitness testimony now, and that's the positives that has come from this kind of research, that we do rely on other more factual scientific evidence other than a human who could be subject to bias. And we work through every single approach in psychology, basically investigating it. What is useful about this research? What benefits has it brought to society? But also what negatives at the same time. To finish off that last will sit in paper 2 at the end of year 12. We will explore what has to be explored in any degree in psychology, and that is the importance of research. We have to understand that common thread that ties every unit together, and that's research. We only have the theories and the evaluation that we have because research has given us that information. And so it's really important as social scientists that we understand what methods a researcher uses to gather the information that we are using in our A-level and will use in future studies. So it's at this point where we will work our way through all the different techniques that a psychologist can use to study whatever aspect of human behaviour is important to them. So things like questionnaires, lab experiments, interviews, observations, all these means of gathering data. But not only are we looking at what these methods are, but we're then looking at how useful those methods are to that researcher. So what benefits is that observation providing for that researcher and then providing for us as academics that are using that research to help our understanding of human behaviour? But with benefits come limitations. And every method will have its limitations as well. So we need to then say, well, how well can I use what that researcher did in a lab experiment? How well can I then use that to explain human behaviour in real life? So now I'm starting to draw upon what is wrong with these findings. Why do I need to be cautious about them? How well can I use them to inform me about human behaviour in real life? And this then is where issues like ethics comes into play. And we will see from ethics that we've come a long way in society because we've come from being a society that has not necessarily looked after the duty of care to its participants in research, whether they were animals or humans. There hasn't been a great deal of care to now being social scientists that will put the care of their participants before anything else. So we will make sure that their rights are protected. We will make sure that they don't come to any harm. And we will look back at research that has been considered unethical and look at where we've come in terms of our understanding of human behaviour on an ethical issue. But we will also still question the ethics of research today, because to a certain extent there may be some cost to our participants as a result of us researching an aspect of human behaviour. So we need to look at these potential criticisms of research. Once we've completed those two modules that I've just shown you, then we have explored the whole of our Year 12 psychology course, all of which will be tested under exam conditions. And they will comprise of 2 exams that will all be sat in the summer term at the end of Year 12. Now looking at the slide in front of us, it's just alerting you to some of the careers that you could get that are psychology related. And what some people may not realise is that a degree in psychology can help you in the education sector, it can help you in the health sector, in the criminal sector, in the mental health sector, which also sort of ties to counselling, and it can also help you in the sports sector in society. So that sort of umbrella heading of psychology can help us in a range of careers in society. And then in terms of entry requirements, we do the foundation 6 GCSEs A to C. We do specify that a B in maths is desirable, even essential. Not that it will be tested to any great lengths in AS, but it definitely will be in A levels. So having some competency with dealing with statistics will help you in the data collection and visual representation of data that you will have to show at AS and A level. And also when it comes to wanting a career in psychology, then accessing those universities or giving you a choice of universities, it is desirable that you have a B in maths, because most of those universities will request that one of those GCSEs is a maths grade B and above. Why study psychology? It's because it's fun and it's fascinating to understand why human beings behave the way that they do. But from a skill set point of view, then it will help you become a better communicator, because we will be discussing the usefulness of therapies, the usefulness of an approach to explain this complex behavior that a human can display. From a literacy point of view, it's going to help you formulate complex arguments. It's going to help you with other subjects that you are studying at A level, especially if they're literacy based. So it's going to help you with formulating arguments that you will have to construct in your humanities subjects, or also complementing your study in sciences and mathematics, for example. Developing a detailed understanding about humans will give you a greater appreciation for all the developmental stages that we work through in our lifespans. And so this subject will help you gain that additional understanding. And also it will help you develop the ability to think critically. We are constantly looking at human behavior from a critical point of view. How useful is this therapy? How useful is this approach at explaining this complex human that sits in front of you, asking maybe for help or asking for a means of resolution to their existing problems? And all of these skills, when you put them together, are respectable skills that most employers would be looking for in an individual. So it will help you in acquiring those skills. I hope you found this presentation informational for you and helps you reach the decision that you're looking for as to whether an A level in psychology is right for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.